Welcome to the Beyond Membership podcast, where we are uncovering what drives associations forward and how the suite of Momentive software products accelerates that momentum. Well, we it's been a little while, Rob, and it feels really good to get back to this. So, how have you been doing, and what's been going on with you lately?
Oh, I've been doing well. I've missed you, Jake. So I'm glad we're back at it. We
Yeah,
haven't interacted as much as we normally do, so it was overdue. As typical, I've been traveling a lot. I had the pleasure of attending the Association Trends uh, celebration. They give awards every year to the top executive at a trade association, the top executive at a professional society. They give an award to the top partner of the year. In fact, that was Sherry Budziak, who's been a prior guest on one of my short clips. She won the partner year, and they invited me to sit at their table, which was a real honor. And of course, there were lots of other awards. Many of our clients won awards as trailblazers. Thad won an award, who I know you know, who's at American Geophysical Society. So very exciting. The other big thing I've been up to is I have acquired myself a Mac Mini, and I have installed OpenClaw on it, and I have been dabbling. So I've been
wow.
uh, having some fun with that, and I hope that my assistant that I have named Mario is going to make my life easier.
Wow, that's really awesome. So you're jumping in on the trends. I love it. I've been doing a lot of home labbing recently myself. Been taking apart all my old computers and setting up Proxmox, which is like a containerization platform that lets you do launch various like VMs and stuff. Just trying to learn my on my own as well. Um, and that whole OpenClaw project has been really crazy to watch that
It's
escalated very,
blown up
very
in like
quickly.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. So it's really
crazy.
cool. It's obviously really exciting times at Momentive. And I'm sure many of our listeners will know that. And as a result, we are joined by a fantastic company today. We have Rich Ballister. He is the Senior Director of Industry Strategy and has joined us as a part of the integration of our two companies, Momentive and Personify. How's it going, Rich? And tell us a little
Uh,
bit about
su-
yourself.
Super excited, Joy. I feel like long time listener, first time caller. Is that what we say here? No, yeah, super excited. It has been a kind of a whirlwind. It seems like, I mean, I think we officially announced this at the beginning of January. And, I've been through these many times in this industry. And so, I think I always, people always ask me, like, what is it like? And, I've really described this as a zipper. Because, we really are bringing best practices. And so, me coming from the Personify side, really my job was to really help our clients, I say translate, what we see, our teams see out in the industry across association and events, and, help them succeed better. Obviously, using the power of our entire platforms. And then, like Rob, out on the road, trying to connect with our clients and share those things. So yeah, it's been an exciting time and excited to be part of the Momentive family.
Awesome. So we have a little ceremony, and we did obviously brief you on this, but we do like to ask our guests, tell us something interesting about yourself, and then we kind of riff on that for a little while. So what do you got?
Well, I thought about telling you my real fear after your last guest was talking about driving over the Bay Bridge, which I'm from Maryland, so I know what that's like. My wife said, don't tell them about your fear of eating paper because that's just going to lead to way too many questions. I do have, goes back to a high school story I won't tell today. But I think what's probably most unique, and I said I was never going to be one of those Disney dads or a Disney fanatic or a Disney adult now, as we're called. And somehow I have become that. And what I've realized, and I went to the first inaugural Customer Experience Institute at Disney, and I think what I like about Disney is it's the way we like to treat our clients, right? How do you convey what you do when you deal with anything really, and Disney does it really well. And then part of it is I get to be a big kid. We tackle a lot of challenges. Our industries and our clients are doing amazing work. So once in a while, it's fun to be a big kid and spin yourself crazy in a teacup. So that's probably my crazy thing. I said I was never going to be a Disney adult or dad, and doggone it, I am one.
And in fact, it was your organization that caused us to write in that forum because the Personify solution was killing us. And so we were like, we've got to throw everything away and restart from scratch. And that forced us to do that. So I've had the greatest respect for your organization. And of course, obviously through your maturation, changing the name to Personify and all that. But certainly at every trade show, I would see your team. I got to know a lot of them over the years. And like when I think about your product portfolio, the one that certainly got me the most exciting that was going to be part of our team, well, there was two really. The first one is the A to Z from the enterprise perspective, just has been such a dominant solution because of all the things it can do. And then we've never had the nano solution set, focused on the really tiny associations. And so your wild apricot solution kind of fits in that, fills that gap that we had in our AMS portfolio. So I'm really interested to see, first of all, just that the way that works, but also anytime you have to build a solution that is self-service, there's so many things that you have to do to make that work well. And I think that there's probably things that we're going to learn, Jake's going to learn, that we'll be able to bring to our other solutions to just make them even more self-service than they already are.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar story for me. Obviously, it's been Personify has been a main competitor since I started working with Nimble 11 years ago, and it's not a name that's gone away anytime since. So it's kind of surreal in a way to like now be joining forces, but in a really awesome way, right? Feels like the Avengers coming together. Um, but I have to shout out the 360 crew because I am working very closely with them lately. So I mean, obviously it's a quite a mature product with a lot of features, and it's interesting to see that to kind of understand the details of that and to be able to kind of look across and see where the gaps are, see what kind of gaps have been plugged, what sort of ways that I kind of look at the overall enterprise AMSs that we have as like a pretty big chunk of the market at this point, and therefore a pretty big chunk of the talent and the industry expertise. And so working with that group has been really exciting, and I think it's been almost kind of vindicating to see a lot of similar technical choices being made and even strategic choices being made. So that so far has been the most fun part about this whole process for me.
So
Yeah,
what about you, Rich?
yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's like you said. I mean, we've been sort of, out in the space, seeing each other a lot and competing a lot. And so, when I look at it, first, when we were going through this process, when you get acquired, I think there's that, will they understand our people, our market, our language? And that was like, when we knew it was officially you all, it was like, whew, okay. I don't have to explain the challenges associations face, and those sort of things. I don't have to explain events. And so that was the first relief for me, was not trying to explain, because, everyone listening in this room knows it's a very unique set of challenges and lingo and timing and when things happen. So, trying to explain that. And I would say even from the technical side, it's sometimes, our why is this urgent, 8 months away from the event, or why is this urgent in this time of the year? Trying to explain that to people that don't understand this market is just a process. And we knew that was right off the table. First thing, really stood out to me, obviously, was MomentiveIQ, and thinking about, I mean, to be fair, we'd always talked about that concept, right? How do we really make sure all these ecosystems connect and talk here we are in this space, and we have that tool. And then obviously along the way, some great products. I will tell you, the clients, I had a lot of phone calls, once we made the announcement, and, excitement around things like certifications and a really robust learning management system, things like that, that I suddenly, I'm like, our menu from both sides just got bigger. And, for the market to suddenly be like, I don't have to pick or choose. I can get everything in one place, layer on MomentiveIQ. Holy smokes. I now, you guys, really are solving our challenges. And so that's what excited me. I mean, I was, again, every time you go through these, I've been through a lot. This is starting my 12th year, and those are the things you worry about, and that was just like instantly off the table. And then studying the product suite was like, okay, let's go out and really make a difference for this audience.
Yeah.
Hey, Jake,
Yes.
since Rich brought up Momentive IQ, and we may have some listeners who have not heard that term before, could you give us the 45 seconds on what that tool is and what benefit it brings to our clients?
Right. I mean, from a high level perspective, it's essentially a communication protocol for the data of our applications. If you look across the applications that are offered in the association space, they have a very similar model of the data in terms of there's very CRM centric data about accounts and contacts. And then there's term-based products that have been sold, like memberships or subscriptions. There's usually a fundraising element, and there's usually an events sort of administrative and hosting element, right? So all of the data is very similar. What Momentive IQ looks to do is create a canonical model that all of our products can understand and communicate with, which means that the data can move freely across between products, opening up a ton of use cases for us in terms of interoperability with products and also building on top of that platform. And that's really cool for associations, right? Because there is no other company in the world that is trying to solve that problem, to give them a platform specifically purpose built for associations for them to build on top of. And all of those use cases, right, represent more capabilities that we can offer our clients, obviously, and specialized things that they can do even with like third parties and their existing vendors, even some of our competitors.
Right, and of course, some of those initial use cases that we are pursuing are building analytics on top of it,
Right.
putting AI agents on top of it, and building widgets that can be projected into, say, a portal page. And those are just a few of the use cases that we're pursuing as a result of having that data in a consistent format.
Right. I mean, like any application, right, is a person interacting with some interface to a computer and data going in or out to some model. And you usually, as the user, you won't really have any understanding of what that is. But that's what IQ sort of solves without you needing to get involved and kind of connects it to other products and offers that data as well. Similar to, other systems that are a lot of companies would use, like for instance, Salesforce or HubSpot. Like they have very open data models that allow for quick integrations with other systems. And we're just doing that specifically for
For
associations
the association
and
nonprofit
this
industry,
space. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also, it opens up because, I mean, obviously, AI is, become such a, conversation point at associations, and, some are, really far along the path, and some are really just starting to dabble. But this is sort of something like a practical application of, wait a minute, we tend to data hoard in this system and that system. And when we start to connect that, I mean, I'm a big advocate, and, often when I'm out talking is like, you're trying to say, hey, how are you looking at these pieces of data, and what story are they telling? Because, when you start to look at even events data and member data, there's stories that suddenly evolve when you can connect systems and or look at that level using AI. It's really powerful because I think, look, I mean, we all know, like, my joke, I hate to say it, it's my joke every time, is, I've yet to meet association professional that says, Rich, I have more time, more budget, more resources than I know what to do with. Right? We're all dealing with this. And so we're looking for ways to not only expedite and be more efficient in our processes and make our teams' lives easier, but we want to make actionable insights from some of this data. And that's where Momentive IQ just basically is like fuel on that fire. And that's what I mean, again, you can hear my excitement, but that's what excites me, because we're taking it from these, very, complex things, and applying a practical application that can drive a strategic decision that every association is looking for, without adding staff and things that, everybody's fearful with. So that's what excites me.
Well, and bringing it back to kind of the connection of our two organizations, and tying that back to Momentive IQ, like as I mentioned earlier, I'm very excited about the wild apricot technology. And one of the things that's a great use case for Momentive IQ is implementing what I would call the federated model. So you have an association that has the national office, and then they have chapters, whether they're local or state or so forth and so on. And all along, we thought that maybe the best approach would be to connect our YM solution, which is for our smaller clients, with either Nimble or Cobalt, one of our enterprise solutions, or all of them for that matter. And of course, Momentive IQ would be again, the broker of data, as Jake was referring to. But some of the challenge that I ran into over the last few months in talking to some of these federated organizations is that some of their chapters are so small, they might only have 75 members or 100 members, and they might have one staff person. And even that size is really below a real target size for YM, but it is spot on the target size for wild apricot. So again, by bringing these two organizations together, we might be able to push forward and provide that federated support that a lot of our clients have been really looking for for a long time, and do it in a way that's really cost efficient for them and supportable for us. So that's just another when seeing the two companies come together, another opportunity there for us.
When I look at wild apricot, what one strikes me is that, we always joke there's a, nonprofit or association for everything. And, when you start digging into the wild apricot client base, there really is. And, there's even, organizations that, their leadership may be volunteer, their entire groups may be volunteer. And yet, you've got a product that can, basically, go from nothing to build out a website and serve that up. What I also find has been fascinating too is that when you look at, AMC's association management companies, they're using a lot of our products as is, but I also see a lot of AMCs looking at onboarding tools like Wild Apricot, because there could be a very small niche association that fits that space. So, it really is interesting, because I think we sometimes think of it just from the small client side, but there are some other AMCs that are saying, hey, you know what? These are higher end, like you said. Sometimes, I'm not going to need to bring a bazooka to a knife fight. That knife is wild apricot, and let's take the knife to the knife fight. And that's been, what amazes me about that product. And it excites me too that it's, we can serve. I think what I hope is a continuum, right? Is that, hey, start a club, a nonprofit, a small organization. We'll move you up the process. And we ultimately, when you get bigger, we have a product or a solution for you as you grow, because we're going to help you grow. We're going to, make sure you grow. And then when you grow out of that product, we can put you in another. And that's another thing that I think, now with our, combined suite, we can serve you when you're just, the Men's Mustache Club of Toronto and 50 guys that want to start a club, to when you grow that to the world's men's mustache club. I'm sure that's on their roadmap, but
yeah, I mean, that's really cool. And I think that maturity model is interesting, and it actually highlights probably what I would consider to be one of the most exciting outcomes from Momentive IQ for us. That doesn't, I would say it's not really sexy, so it doesn't get a whole bunch of exciting talk about it, but it's data migration. So for instance, a customer that starts with us on Wild Apricot and they grow their organization to the size to someday want Nimble AMS, they may make 4 or 5 stops throughout our product portfolio. We should, Momentive IQ, one of the outcomes is that it would make that process seamless, because the data migrations would happen via the bus that we've already put in place, this data bus that is Momentive IQ. And maybe that's why, as a technical person, I always go back to talking about just the fact that it's a data layer. And I'm not, and I don't center on all the things that we want to build on top of it, which are obviously like the really cool things and the really useful things. But that to me is really exciting, right? That we could potentially offer that experience to a customer. It could even potentially be self-served, right? I want to see a demo of my data in this other product.
Well,
What does that
often a
look like?
roadblock. You
Yeah,
remove that roadblock, because a lot of people
exactly.
will stay in a solution, to me, often that they've outgrown, but the thought of what that next steps
Exactly.
look at is prevents you from
Overwhelming.
doing that. And if
Yeah.
you solve that, we can create that continuum.
Mhm.
Well, and another thing that comes to mind for me, Rich, is thinking about the Personify 360 customer base, which in many cases are some of the largest associations in the industry running an AMS product. I mean, you have some of the 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 real creme de la creme of associations, and it is very possible that they are just really satisfied with what 360 is providing them for their staff to manage their business. The financial capabilities are very deep. There's been a lot of investment that's gone into that. And it is very possible that with MomentiveIQ sitting on top of that and allowing maybe the integrations to be easier, allowing the capabilities of the data analytics and an architecture to overlay AI, that suddenly that solution seems like it has, a much longer life again, and that perhaps changing is not something that needs to be considered. And so to me, I'm thinking that just really provides a lot of new capabilities, which might be just the things that they thought they might have needed and a reason to move on to something else. Have you heard any of that from some of the clients that you've been chatting with that you know so well?
Yeah, I mean, I think of course, they want to know as much as they can as quickly as can. What can we get? What can we, and I think that's the hard part from the excitement is, hey, a lot of this is yes, let's have those conversations. So I think there's a lot of conversations on what, when, and how quickly, and I think that's what is always. Obviously the first immediate challenge as we zipper these two organizations is that, some of these possibilities, I think we're all starting to brainstorm, and I feel like I'd be remiss, if we mentioned A to Z, or, Rob, you mentioned it as one of them. And I think, I want to give a little context because that's another example of, it doesn't matter the size of an association when you start to get a trade show component, which is what A to Z, plays really well and has for 25, 26, 27 years or whatever it's been now, is that you're serving, large scale trade shows. Now, I know we also work with Comic-Con, which is, well-known business to consumer show, but we also manage some of the top 100 trade shows where you're talking 40,000 attendees and thousands of exhibitors in some of the largest convention spaces in the world. Now layer on RegTech and registration technology solutions, mobile apps through both of our suites. We can power some of the most amazing trade shows out there. And watching orgs even go from paper contracts, you'd be surprised there are still people conducting business and taking credit cards on pieces of paper that someone slips in a notebook. And so when we move them over to things like online contracting and stuff, it's watching lives get better. So that's another thing. So, for those who don't know what A to Z is, that serves that trade show market, from really, 50 exhibitors, 100 exhibitors on up to thousands of exhibitors and, thousands of attendees. And so that's, that I did want to throw that out to the audience so they know, what that particular piece serves on top of the existing registration technology solutions we have.
Yeah, that fits so nicely because Momentive already had such good on-site registration, the badging as you mentioned that we have running Comic-Con show, and then to have your A to Z platform that is actually then running the trade show and all that, the two things really align beautifully. And you probably noticed that we plucked one of your senior person, Roger Price, to run that whole team, which I thought was a great move. And incidentally, since I brought that up, our listeners might be interested to know that members of your team became our CFO and became our head of HR. So coming back to your zipper concept, we really have feathered in, the real talent from Personify throughout the organization and just to strengthen us as much as possible.
Yeah, Roger is again, been around a long time, joined A to Z, back in 2018, I want to say, and so really, understands that market. And I will say the team, now our great teams work together. Ironically, Jason, who is our leads product for events, I joke. I mean, we've known each other a long time, but lives across the street from me, not directly like my neighbor across the street, but neighborhood across the street. And so, that's the strengthening those organizations, and that's only brings more to our clients to say, hey, I've loved my role and excited to be, with you, Rob, and others to say, like, because I mean, I think most of our clients look at us and say, yeah, you've got this amazingly powerful tool, but help me, figure out how to implement it. Help me how to figure out how to maximize it. What are we doing? What are others doing? And bringing that power together, because I don't know, to me, when you create purpose-built software, that comes in with an inherent, I think, like cape style superhero. You need to also provide us some guidance on what's best practices. And the fact that we get to do that and are tasked with that, I say that every day. Like, that's what I love my job is. I'm here to help you with these solutions, but ultimately I'm helping you to succeed as an organization. And let us tell you, because we get to sit in the coolest seats, we get to see it across orgs of all sizes. And so to be able to provide, like, hey, have you ever thought about this, or try this, or can we show you this? That's, I don't know, that's what gets me up every morning to do that again.
Well, in the you almost kind of dipped into that a little bit, Rich. So one of the things that we're doing is we're standing up a new team at the organization called Industry Strategy, which will be something that I'll be heading up. And I've kind of played that role as an independent person at Momentive, but we're creating a whole team, and Rich is going to be on that team with me. But we picked other, like, what I would call very experienced people, like the head of Cobalt, the head of Volunteer Matters, the head of what was once upon a time Netforum and Gravitate. And the purpose of that team is to work alongside with our clients as they're trying to come up with strategies to move the organization forward, to try and give you like that holistic view on what you should be doing and what we think is happening from best practices. So the great thing about this team is we're not beholden to bill any hours. We're not beholden to we don't have a quota per se. We're obviously supporting the rest of the organization, but we're there to be, high-end client advocates, be high-end client strategists, and we hope that that will really help, especially the organizations that are trying to make some big changes. And because of our size, we're able to have a team like that. And that was even for us before the Personify acquisition. We probably weren't big enough to have that. So there's some advantages to getting bigger. Now, just to change the direction of this conversation just a little bit, Rich, I mean, clearly, I think that we've articulated why bringing Personify in has made a lot of sense. I'm kind of curious, maybe the listeners would find it interesting to see, like, if there is anything you found kind of just unusual or kind of funny, or as it relates to the cultures between the organizations, or kind of how things have gone together. There's technologies.
Well, there's always the Slacks teams battle. There's the, we're huge Confluence fans. I mean, yeah, I think those are, every organization can appreciate that. I mean, for a while, having, multiple email addresses, or, I log into this, where SharePoints are. And so that's always to be expected, but I think culturally it's hard at moments to realize, you said it earlier, like, wait a minute, these people across the road, we used to be like, hey, our ears listening to try to understand what you all were doing. And now it's like, wait, we can just ask them, like, why did you build this? Or why did you do this? And so that's, or our, those things that now we can ask each other. And like you said, sometimes we can validate, or, oh, we didn't think about that, or they do that better. And I think that's also, when you look at these opportunities to say, how do you take, what was best over here and best over here? And again, I keep using the zipper, but that's what it feels like to me, is zip those two together And, because ultimately that's what will make the teams, excited to work here, and then our clients, happy to be a part of it, because, we're all learning that. But so that's the biggest thing is that sometimes I will admit at this point, like, am I in Slack? Did I send this message in Teams? We're in that transition period. And so I'm like, those are my biggest struggles at the moment, is where the heck did I send this message, and or who do I contact for this? But I'm curious from your side, like, how has it been? What's different about having, our whole group in here?
Oh, I still have a Gmail account from Nimble user back in 2015. So, yeah, it's quite similar. I think one thing that's been kind of interesting is like tenure. A lot of the people I've met have like double digits in years of tenure, which is unusual, I think, but also similar in our company, I think, as well. The gaps sometimes between time, working here, but um, people with like long history at the organization. So I don't know, I think that's pretty cool, and I don't know about quirky or different. Um, yeah, I don't know.
You know, as you probably know, Rich, we made several acquisitions just before you. In 2025, we acquired Volunteer Matters, Cobalt, and Blue Sky, which of course we now call that product Path. Those organizations were much smaller in staff size. They were, maybe 50 staff, 35 staff, depending on, maybe Path was just a little bit bigger than that, but they were so much smaller than us. And so they had their cultures were that you have when you're a 35 or 50 person organization. With the acquisition of Personify, because you were a large company, not as big as us, but you had a lot of history, and as Jake said, a lot of people with a lot of tenure. I felt like the two organizations' corporate cultures were really aligned. Just with a very kind of professional focus. There wasn't really anybody who thought that somebody was stealing their cheese, and so I really feel, if you've ever read that book, um, that the two have fit together very nicely. And I was actually worried because I thought, with the smaller groups, there were some challenges and some hiccups. Like if you are a person who comes from a 35 staff organization and you join an organization that has more than 1,000 people, that just may not be your vibe, right?
Right.
And so we may have actually had more people who left from those smaller groups than we have with the Personify, because your organization was large, and just the kind of business practices and expectations were, I think, similar. So I don't think it was it wasn't a leap for your team. Um, and so while I feared that there would be chaos because of the size of you, it's been the reverse. It's been actually even less so, and which I've been very pleased about. And I don't know, Jake, you're seeing the same thing on the R&D side?
It's actually, yeah, that's actually a really good view, because I was really involved with Cobalt, and I've been really involved with Personify integration processes. And with Cobalt, they were a very small company, and we kind of had to do a lot of rebuilding and removing with to set things up in a similar way to how we expect. Um, I think, for instance, I could say is like they didn't really have a R&D engineering team. It was more driven through sales that they would make over time. So that's a huge difference to how we do things here. Obviously, like we spend a lot of time invested in R&D, and it's similar for Personify, or yeah, for all of Personify. You guys spent a lot of effort and time in R&D, similar size teams as we've had, so it was more normal. It was just more kind of regular versus kind of a little, probably I would say some thrashing when with the smaller companies, especially I came from one. It was the same thing for me when I joined from Nimble. We had a very tight knit culture. It's like, what do you mean we're going to use this other tool and not this thing that we love, right? And you go through your 7 stages of grief or whatever it is, and then you move on and start using the new tools.
Put your big boy pants on and just
Yeah,
deal with it.
yeah. Use the other chat instead of Slack. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean
it's too soon for Rich. I'm sorry, Rich.
yeah, it's well, but I've been through. I mean, I think I've been, Slack teams, teams. I mean, like you go through this, and
Yeah,
it's just that muscle reflex of like, okay, where's the share button? I know it really well here. I got to remember where it here is. Those are the things that I think start to trip you up,
Mhm.
and so. But other than that, yeah, no, I mean, I think it's when you look at the possibilities, I think that's what's kept the team motivated. And like I said earlier, it's we weren't acquired by somebody that doesn't understand, because we've done that. You play trying to educate people, that their timelines are different and everything they do is different, and that can exhaust a team instead of starting with like, okay, what are we going to do build better versus, okay, I need to explain who we serve. And so that
Yeah,
we started running, not, we didn't have to stop and run
And
or
explain everything, right?
right. Yep.
I think that definitely helps.
So, Rich, I know that you do maybe even more speaking and traveling than I do. What are the next couple of engagements you have coming up that our listeners might find interesting?
Yeah, it's been, spring is lining up. I'm excited about, so I tend to, a lot of the, ASAE related conferences, some of the regional ones, like, where we have offices, which is great, like Georgia. I've got 2 sessions coming up. Working with on the event side, IEE has a small and mid-sized association event forum, and I'm speaking there. Those are the immediately popped in my head. We've got VenCon coming up. So many events and opportunities to speak both on the events and association side that, and I love doing it with our clients. We're also giving an ASAE webinar. I think I have 3 webinars in the next couple months too, but all bringing on our amazing clients, because I think my job too is, again, not only translating, but bringing on our amazing clients. And the best is when we have mutual clients, like for the Georgia Association executives, we had a shared mutual client, and so she's been great and spoken with me in the past. And so yeah, so when we bring on these panelists, they also can help, because we hear their stories and we let them, so you can hear them and ask them questions. So I'm pretty excited about all our upcoming, panels and topics on everything from learning to events, to registration. So yeah, pretty excited about that, because that's, again, the more we can help you all learn what we're seeing from other, we even sometimes we talk about stuff that doesn't work because y'all want to hear that too, and that's our
Yeah.
job.
And so, Rich, just to kind of end that topic, I'm sure that you had a certain narrative that you were telling, or that was kind of threading through things in 2025 pre the acquisition, and now you're in 2026. Is there like, has your narrative changed, or are you queuing in on different topics? I'm just kind of curious what people are finding most interesting for you to be chatting about.
Well, I think there's a couple. I mean, AI, I feel like we've kind of gone on a roller coaster, I mean, and I'll be honest, I think we were a little ahead of the curve in AI. I thought, AI, and then I dialed back to more AI readiness. And, I think now we see more associations, further along in that process. So I'm still doing a good bit of AI, but it's about readiness, and I think it's actually practical application. Obviously, non-dues revenue. I mean, here we are, 6 years after the pandemic, and a lot of our association clients are driving, I mean, from, some as 40, as high as 80% from their events. And so, I talk a lot about that. It's like how you continue to juice those. I think learning, is another piece, is understanding of, everyone's, really trying to figure out how to maximize that, both for revenue and both for, member satisfaction. And so I think, those are the topics that I'm seeing right now is, again, how do we generate revenue with small staff, with the tools that we have, and where does AI fit into that? Those to be seem to be where of the things that I continually get accepted on session proposals that whatever, that seems to be hitting with the reviewers, and so that's probably where we'll start out this year with.
Oh, that's great.
Cool.
Well, I think that I recommend our listeners to look for Rich on the agendas at the association meetings, because it sounds to me like he has some great topics.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing folks out on the road, and stay tuned for all our Momentive webinars coming up, and our ASA webinars, because it'll probably be folks you know. So make sure you stay tuned. I know we're sending out emails about that stuff, but or reach out to us. If you ever feel like you have something to share, or you want to brainstorm, and that's what we're here for. We're happy to help.
All right, Rich, thanks for joining us today, and it's been a really fantastic conversation, and we appreciate you sharing your experience with that integration with us. And that's been another episode of Beyond Membership Podcast.